Story 1. My sister wanted to write a Loki thirst fan fiction on fanfiction.net, but was too embarrassed to make an account. So I made one. She always said if she were a writer, she would have a posh pen name like Lady Cordelia Stewart, so I used that. Now I use it everywhere. We did write that Loki thirst fan fiction, by the way. A whole series of them, actually. Story 2. I was at work on my phone, creating a new Reddit account, trying to think of a username. Other coworkers and I were wearing hard hats, each decorated with various stickers reflecting our personalities and interests. Some were covered in band name stickers, some had golf stickers, others featured favorite cars, some were jingoistic, and so on. All except one coworker. His hard hat was well used and scratched, with nothing on it except the small original stickers that designated his shop code number and his last name. What was especially strange was that he seemed to live a wild personal life, yet refused to customize his hard hat beyond the bare minimum required by the job. That's where I got the idea for my username, an uninspired hat. Story 3. My username comes from the time I accidentally walked into the wrong apartment after a night out with friends. The door was unlocked. I flopped on what I thought was my couch and woke up to a very confused elderly man offering me coffee. Story 4. Being Scottish but based in Singapore. A native of Scotland is called a Scot, and Singapore is nicknamed the Little Red Dot. Apparently, someone else had Scott in the dot first but had not posted in a very long time. To tie in with my YouTube and Instagram accounts, I had to add the word official. Story 5. I am usually difficult to handle in general. Also, in private, I use too many drugs and drink excessively. Story 6. My mother calls me her alien baby, and I have relationships with men. I was reading an article about comic books before choosing my name. I did not want a Reddit name like Artificial Avocado or Insinuated Whelk. It had to be relevant to me. Story 7. It is completely random because Reddit will not let me change it. Now, my other account is a play on my first initial and pays homage to a certain Los Angeles rapper. Story 8. The title of my favorite 19th century French Gothic novella. One of literature's first werewolf stories in long form. Story 9. Brooklyn Nine-Nine Season 1, Episode 2, The Tagger. Timestamp, around 12 minutes. My name is Banana Fartman, medical doctor. Story 10. I love evolution, and I love reading about it. Charles Robert Darwin is very famous. I thought if I capitalize W, it will make it win, and it would be cool. 1809 is just the birth year of Darwin. Story 11. I like to imagine I am a swan deep inside, or a potential swan, as I often feel like an ugly duckling. I feel caged by life and my limitations. Even if there is something beautiful in me, it feels as if it is hidden and locked up. Story 12. I saw it on a phone game I played at one point. It was the RuPaul's Drag Race game, and there was a queen named Dolorofa Turkeyleg. I thought it was the funniest thing. When prompted to create my username here, I couldn't think of anything witty, so I used the drag queen name. Story 13. I overheard the phrase somewhere and thought it sounded cool. Maybe it was something completely different, but it got stuck in my head. Story 14. I have otters. They eat fish and leave the bones in my boathouse. When I go out there and see the bones, they just appear and look at me, kind of ashamed like, yes, that was us. Sorry for the mess. Story 15. My uncle had schizophrenia. Once, he saw another person with schizophrenia and said, he is like me. That gave me a different perspective on life and mental disorders. So that and being a warrior is just something personal to me. Story 16. I forgot my username and was off Reddit for a while. I made a new account and apparently they had changed it so that you had to have a password. Of course, I forgot that. I was unable to remember, partially due to a traumatic brain injury in 2010, and partially due to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I now have a notebook that holds usernames and passwords, so when I need to remember, there it is. I cannot remember well. I am a chronic sufferer. Story 17. I made my online names for gaming the same as my computer name back at college so they could be found on the network. Inferno was named after I accidentally set the microwave on fire with popcorn during my first week at the dorms. Obsidian replaced Inferno when I built a new system based on AMD instead of what was in the Compaq. By the third system I built, I didn't want to build it, but I had to work around all the Windows 2000, NVIDIA GeForce One, Creative Sound Blaster Live, and AMD KX133 chipset issues. I upgraded to a bigger case, an Intel motherboard, a Pentium 3 CPU, and an NVIDIA GeForce 2 graphics card. The whole build was not a desired upgrade. It was a necessary solution. I added some initials because a common name like that was taken everywhere online when I finally started using forums. Story 18. The Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, an underground comic from the 1970s, features 3 hairy drug enthusiasts and their cat. Story 19. My Chinese name before I was adopted was Fu Hong Fong. I used to be called Hong Hong, so I changed it to Fufu because it was shorter and cuter. Story 20. My name was a made-up word my sister created to call my brother. When Xbox Live first came out, I had to think of a gamertag, and everything I came up with was taken, so I decided to use that ever since. The funny part is she complained to me that I was using her word. So I said, "I'm sorry, are you currently using it?" "No." And now here we are. Story 21. My cat had a typical cat name, and my roommate at the time started pronouncing it as Minus. The next time I had to create a username for something, I went with Miss Minus, and it has stuck for the last 10 years or so. Story 22. At the time, I did not want anyone to know about my business. I was 16 and cringy. The 702 is my area code. Story 23. I used to enjoy creating my own television shows, video games, or other stories as a child. Wharton was one of the random names I invented for a character when I was about 8 years old. Story 24. In the introduction to Hotline Miami 2, a character says, "This party sucks. I hate these people." Someone created an edit that says, "This party rules. I love these people." Story 25. I created it in 1995 when I first used the internet. I imagined I would run a business, and this was the name I thought of. I have been using it and the same email from that time ever since. Story 26. Both my first and last names are Banks, and people used to give me a nickname after a well-known rapper who was part of 50 Cent's crew in the 2000s. Story 27. Niece had Big Mac in her username and thought that was cool. But back then, I did not know how to spell it, and it stuck. Story 28. It is kind of random, honestly. Just something that popped into my head while I was signing up. Over time, it started to feel like part of my online identity, so I stuck with it. Story 29. My username is based on the serial killer from my favorite show, Scream Queens. He is a big green swamp monster. Story 30. Short for Kyuki, which is the name I changed to after abandoning the name Zenith because there was someone popular in the Team Fortress 2 community with the same name. Story 31. I panicked and put my current username instead of what I actually wanted, which was CO twice, referring to the chemical equation that turns lime water milky. Story 32. It originated from this song. Then I spelled it differently because it was the 1990s, and we thought those things were cool. Story 33. Relatively close to my actual name, and curry was already in use, so I added random numbers until it worked. Story 34. I am not good at coming up with clever names, but Fallout New Vegas is one of my favorite games of all time, and the Brotherhood of Steel is pretty cool. Story 35. Simply, my username was auto-generated when I created my Reddit profile, and I was too lazy to change it. Story 36. I love King of Queens, especially Arthur, so. Story 37. I wanted to move away from a previous name I had used for decades. I used a random name generator. People think I misspell Thrasher, but I just used what it gave me. Story 38. I am constantly feeling aroused, angry, and I lack any kind of imagination, so I used my actual name. Also, I did not know it could not be changed. Story 39. I wanted it to appear randomly generated, while maintaining the Vixen aesthetic I use on several other social media accounts. Story 40. You wouldn't understand the history of this name. I know it's a quote from another movie, but what can I say? I like Polish comedies from the late 1990s and early 2000s. Story 41. My YouTube channel name comes from my Roblox username, which I still have today, 010ARB. Story 42. A friend of mine used to create videos on YouTube. Another friend and I decided to create a YouTube account with a silly name to leave silly comments under his videos to tease him a bit. We were about 17 years old at the time. We came up with the name Franz Allspring. I had a Reddit account with that name before but deleted it, so for this new account, I just reversed the name. Story 43. I like to be focused on certain things. That's where I get the word square from, and cats because I love cats. The numbers are there for fun. Story 44. Used to have an afro when I was a teenager. I was very passionate then, and thus aphrodisiac, which means aphrodisiac. Story 45. Seems self-explanatory. Story 46. I explored the etymological meaning of my real name through the Dragon language translator from the game Skyrim about 10 years ago, and this is the result. Story 47. You just have to say the letters individually with a German accent and think of an old Two Ronnies United Kingdom skit. Story 48. I love Reddit as it gives me a chance to learn about others and have them share pieces of their story. The funny thing is that whenever I get a direct message, it is someone looking to learn about me. Someone saying to my username, "What's your story?" is a good icebreaker. Story 49. When people first started saying, "This is my throwaway, so I'll be honest," I thought, what is something you throw away? Story 50. For once, the random generator because I cannot be bothered with names anymore. You would be amazed at how many people think I am automatically male from the name. Laugh out loud. Story 51. My nickname is Ben 10, but that was not interesting enough or available, so Benjamin Tenjamin it was. Story 52. My older brother used to call me Terra, which means a terror, when we were younger. He still does sometimes. When he set up my Minecraft account, he gave me the username I am Terra. Story 53. I used to have a small balcony garden in my first apartment, and I was proud of my little herb collection. I thought I was an urban farming expert until I killed every plant within 3 months. Story 54. A metal band in my area called Bad Axe. They thought they were rubbish, I thought they were good. They did not last long. Story 55. I made this username for my Minecraft account when I was 7. When I created this account, I could not think of anything better. I am always afraid that my username makes me sound like a creep, but I have a lot of karma and achievements on this account, so I do not want to make a new one. I dislike the name very much. Story 56. I am a very confused person and possibly have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I find myself in random online forums with no recollection of how I got there. Story 57. My original name on this account was a result of a random name generator that sounded good to my younger self. My new name is an acronym whose original meaning is only known to me. I use it on most accounts now, excluding this one, as you cannot change your original name. Story 58. I was called a shrieking banshee once because I disagreed with someone. I decided to own it and changed my username. Story 59. I got a baseball cap from a friend who went to the United States that happens to say Zolos on the back of it. It is a football club from Tijuana. Maybe it is a football cap then. I do not know. I have had this cap until today. It is my insignia. Story 60. We had a meeting of the Craigs. I came out on top and was allowed to be the Craig. The one and only, the definitive, except no substitute. 89 is just the year I was born. The whole package together is my personal brand. Story 61. Studied music technology and then promptly forgot most of it after managing to graduate during the music industry's biggest period of decline in decades. I vaguely remember signal-to-noise ratio being a concept that got mentioned. I like noisy, heavy music of various genres, so it seemed fitting. The number is my year of birth, not a reference to Adolf Hitler as some have accused me of. Story 62. I initially decided on an email address when I was about 12 years old. Comcast.net, which I no longer use. The name took me 3 hours of searching the internet using AltaVista, then Ask Jeeves and Lycos. After many somewhat organized searches, I found the simplest word I could find with no usage. Seat. I still use variations, but I discovered the word is apparently semi-common. So now it is all Seattleite. Story 63, Roland of Gilead, also known as Roland of ELD, is not a fantastic name for a woman who is a self-certified constant reader, but Woman of ELD was available and seemed fitting. Story 64. I am about 20% covered in colorful tattoos and intend to be 80% covered by the time of my death if I can afford it. The letter O would not fit. Story 65. I needed some luck the day I opened my Reddit account. I was having an awful day, and the thought of fortune cookies brought a smile to my face. Story 66. Long ago and far away, when we all got Citizens Band radios, my friends decided my name would be Christmas Tree. Years later, I needed a username that was a valid disk operating system file name, so I chose Smistry. When joining Reddit, Smistry was not available, so I added another E at the end. Story 67. My old childhood misspelling of Galatea, a name I thought was cool as a kid, and since it was never taken, I just kept it. Story 68. My love for ocelots, and words that fit together quite neatly, and my kingdom of ocelots. Not to forget. Story 69. Ween was formed after band members Aaron Freeman and Mickey Melchiondo claimed the demon god Bonish appeared to them during junior high typing class. Story 70. I work in retail. Customers made jokes about my name and how it is just like Texas. I am from Australia, so I came up with this username to remind people that I am not from Texas. Story 71. Mine was originally my anonymous account, but it is the main one I use now. My real username, which I use in games and everywhere, is an evolution of my original username from the days of internet relay chat. My friend and I would troll people who joined our resident server, but for fun, I would occasionally enter with versions of my username in different languages to mess with friends. The final one that I currently use is a rough translation in a language that is nearly forgotten and hard to find, so no one can crack it without clues. Story 72. One day, I decided to carbonate a random drink with a soda stream. I carbonated a drink called Pingo. Tasted great. I tried it again in the morning, and it still tasted great. Then, a friend of mine was referring to my girlfriend at the time because she had a drink as her username on Instagram. He couldn't remember her username and started listing drinks. He casually mentioned the carbonated Pingo, and I thought, that could be my username. Since that day, it has been my username. Story 73. I just used the random name generator for my Vulcan character in the massively multiplayer online role-playing game Star Trek Online. When I had to create an account somewhere, I used current level and character name as the username and discovered that it tends to be available. Story 74. I like the song, particularly the version they used in BoJack Horseman Season 4, Episode 2, The Old Sugarman Place. Story 75. Vikingo. I have no idea why that account was cancelled. It is a hint of my origin. P.S. I'll take a guess and say that the original poster is German. Story 76. My good friend created a version of it during the East-West Coast feud in the late 1990s, and I liked it with my name. He passed away a few years later, and I use it to honor his memory. Story 77. I hated that I always got the pop-up asking if I would rather use the app when I tried browsing the Call of Duty Zombies subreddit. Story 78. At the time, I had just finished watching Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann and absolutely loved the character Kamina. His unwavering determination, boisterous attitude, and surprising depth. Crayman, because I am terrible at spelling, should have been Crayman, the primary antagonist for most of Panzer Dragoon Saga. There was no deeper meaning. I just liked those two names. Story 79. The Pittsburgh Penguins are my favorite hockey team. Sidney Crosby and Mario Lemieux are two of my all-time favorite players. Story 80. My first dog, who passed in 2023 from cancer, used to come up and gently touch your hand with his cold, wet nose whenever he wanted something. I nicknamed him Mr. McBooples. Story 81. There is an image I like of a group of seals bouncing around. It also helps keep me more anonymous because the nickname many people know me by is also animal-based. Story 82. Fire Sign Theater. Voice of the future. Please state your name. Clem. Voice of the future. Thank you, Clem. Story 83. My username was randomly generated by Reddit. The other name on my profile is my Roblox handle. Story 84. A Gibson 335 is a guitar. A Fender is also a guitar, but a Fender 335 is not a guitar. It does not mean anything. It is just that. Story 85. I was on Redbubble and saw a shirt with Muscle Wizard casts fist on it. I found it funny to think of a Conan the Barbarian character who had found and now wears a wizard hat and believes he is a wizard that can cast spells. Even though he just shouts, "I cast fist," and punches his enemies. I had to add the number 1 because another person was using the same name. I also use I cast fist for my Xbox gamertag and social media. Story 86. Hey brother's name. I'm making a Reddit account. What is a good username? The rest is history. Story 87, kind of ironic now. I was joking about how computer artificial intelligence would be if the Matrix happened, the AI singularity and how it could learn. Based on what most computers were exposed to, they would build a giant big orange machine like a video game boss battle. I was walking past a robot arm that was orange. It was the first week of college, and I needed a new email address to use Microsoft Network Messenger. Since I just told the joke and did not need any numbers that are hard to remember when giving it out, I thought I would keep it. Story 88. In the early 1980s, several of us thought we were computer hackers with cool nicknames. I asked my friend Chris what name I could have. Chris, who was L. Exam Maxell backwards, thought for a second and said Ekenria Nike Air backwards. I have been using it for 40 years. When I joined Reddit, I needed to add a number to it. I own a 1928 Ford Model A sedan delivery. Story 89. I had my former friends call me a Minato simp because all I really do is talk about how Minato Namikaze is a really cool and awesome character. Story 90. I just made this account yesterday. My previous username was a misspelling of my name with random numbers. I decided to use something different. After feeding wild cats yesterday, I felt like seeing other people's cats. Story 91. My friend used to say, "You local legend," when we played games like Halo. For example, if you saved his life by killing an enemy, he would say, "Oh, name, you local legend." One day, I decided to make it a username. Story 92. Louisa was one of the popular choices when I decided to change my name. At that time, I created several online accounts with different names I liked to get a feel for what suited me best. Ultimately, I did not choose Louisa. However, I have used this account for 4 years to maintain my anonymity. The numbers at the end are derived from a PIN number I used once, originally 192536. Story 93. I'm a boy and I like briefs. The number 69 is because the numbers are both funny and relate to me being gay. All my usernames I've ever had are like that. Each part must have some meaning. However, I do like my current gaming username and my Reddit username now. Story 94. I liked hoodies a lot and still do. In Czech, a hoodie is called a mikina, and the K at the end fits nicely. Story 95. Years ago, I needed a World of Warcraft character name. I had a bottle of super glue sitting on my desk. I guess it just kind of stuck. Story 96. A terrible scary story I came across when I was drunk back in 2014. Story 97. Angry Machinist also uses variations of Riot Girl as my gaming tag, referring to the Good Charlotte song. Story 98. My female dog really liked cleaning, licking her genital area until it became swollen and her back legs were kicking in the air. We would call it her party for one. Story 99. Remember the days of Halo 2 on Xbox when you could not mute people? I would play banjo music in my microphone when racists were spewing hate. Story 100. Heidi is the name of my childhood dog. Dover is the name of my childhood street. It would be my stage name if I were a performer. Story 101. Boring first name and last name. My name is Razvan Grig. Therefore, Razvangry swapped the I with Y. Some people see the word angry, but that is not the case and is just a coincidence. Story 102. My college roommate and I loved a specific YouTube series, and I made this username to troll him. Then my original username was exposed, so I abandoned it and switched to this one. Story 103. It started about 20 years ago as the dancing hobbit. Then he tripped and fell and now has a taste for halfling brains. Story 104. I have always wanted to be one of the girls on that website, the father of OnlyFans. However, young people do not know what I am talking about and think I am just depressed. Story 105. My brother-in-law's echolalia causes him to repeat phrases. He said this, and I immediately replied, "That's my Reddit name." Story 106. That famous meme where a woman bursts out of the car and starts running away from the man while screaming. The man then asks the important question, "Why are you running?" Story 107. Someone in my college Dungeons and Dragons group told me I sounded like what I imagine a gnome would sound like when I get upset but not mad. But I was way too tall to be a gnome. Story 108. I read Hamlet in high school. Hamlet's response to Polonius' line, "What do you read, my lord?" always struck me as funny. Story 109. I heard it said literally 10 seconds before making my account, so I used the expression as my username. I am spontaneous like that. Story 110. Once I was watching a streamer playing Cuphead. When he couldn't beat one of the bosses, Grim Matchstick, he said, "Bro, I'm evolving into the cream cheese." We found it very funny and kept repeating the phrase as our inside joke. I liked it so much that I made it my username on Discord and Reddit. Story 111. Combination of my favorite character and my birthday. Pikachu username is taken, so I changed K to C. Story 112. I wanted to be called Captain Crunch, but made a spelling mistake. Now I sound like a superhero with paralysis. Story 113. I ate a wombat and felt guilty about it, so I assumed his identity. Now, I send his family letters explaining why my business trip has been extended yet again. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.